Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Pamela Goodwin, and I am the chair of the New Jersey Clean Water Council. We're delighted to be hosting today this event in which we're going to hear a lot more about sustainable green infrastructure. And we're doing this in conjunction with EPA Region 2. They've been wonderful in helping us coordinate this event and getting our wonderful panels of speakers here. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Steve Vita. Steve is the coordinator in EPA Region 2 for the state revolving funds, and he was absolutely instrumental in allowing us to present this panel to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. First of all, what I'd like to do is just say thank you to the New Jersey Clean Water Council and New Jersey DEP for providing this forum to present green infrastructure, to Stan for all the work that he did in making this happen, to Matt Millay for the green infrastructure work that Onondaga County has done, for somehow finding the time to get down here from his busy schedule, and also for being able to travel out of state. As you all know, we all have a lot of problems with traveling out of state. And I don't know how he did it, but congratulations on getting free from New York State. And then Mark Lichtenstein for all the outreach and education that the Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse University has provided to New York State regarding green infrastructure, environmental efficiency, sustainability, and climate change. And now they're going to be able to present this, provide this type of work here in New Jersey, not just to the state, but they can also do it to municipalities. And then Michelle Putnam, thank you for your interest in incorporating green infrastructure into CSO mitigation. I guess the best way to give you an overall view about green infrastructure, our Deputy Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, Bob Persepi, has said it, and I think very well, that there's a place for green infrastructure and there's a place for gray infrastructure, and how you work them together is what can be accomplished. And what Matt's going to be able to do is show exactly what Onondaga County has done to combine the two, save money, environmentally sounder, climate change improvements, a lot of, well, I'll let Matt will get into all the details about that. And also just want to say for Mark with the Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse University, which he will explain what that is, if you think after you listen to what he says, if you think he can help you, please contact him. EPA is providing some funding for that organization to do the type of work that they have been doing in New York State to provide that work here in New Jersey. And then finally, I would like to thank the New Jersey DEP's Clean Water and Drinking Water Program. I happen to be the SRF program, so I have to put a push in for the SRF program. But, you know, we all are very aware of the work that has been done with the SRF program regarding safe drinking water and water quality, the benefits that we've received there. But something just to think about when it comes to the economy. In the state fiscal year 2011, the state dispersed funds equivalent to 4,600 full-time equivalent jobs. So in addition to protecting the environment, that is a lot for one state, one program to create. So finally, I'd just like to say thank you for all of you coming here, your interest in green infrastructure, especially on a Friday afternoon. So with that, Mark from the from the Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse University.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. It is going to be tough to do this on a Friday afternoon, I know it. We're going to get you out of here a little bit earlier, I think, than what was on the schedule, so that'll be one good thing. But you're going to hear a really good speaker in Matt Millay, really entertaining and some just phenomenal work. I know we're biased because I'm biased because I do live in the region that we're talking about, but I think you're going to quickly see that they're doing some unique things up there. There are lots of components of what's happening in Onondaga County that we think can be replicated in communities across the country, particularly here in New Jersey. So I think there are going to be a lot of similarities, and you'll see that. So after Matt's done, I'm going to talk a little bit about the role that the Environmental Finance Center has in public education and outreach. We think that's important for you to understand some of the strategies that we've employed to help support the county in their efforts. But before I do that, I did want to give you a little background on the Environmental Finance Center. It is based at Syracuse University, but it is a center. It's a national center. It's one of 10 around the country. All of them are based at universities. All of them are affiliated with each of the EPA regions in the country. So ours is intended to serve all of EPA Region 2. So that includes New Jersey. Actually, we've done a lot of work in New York. That makes sense, and we're based in Syracuse. It's easier to do things close to where your home is. We've been doing a lot of work in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. That's part of Region 2, primarily in the solid waste arena. And in New Jersey, we've done a little bit of work with Pinelands Commission. Highlands Commission, is that the other commission? Yeah. Just a little bit over the years, but we see some great opportunity to provide services for you, and Steve alluded to that. So we can provide a basic level of services to communities in New Jersey with a broad range of sustainability challenges. What we were able to do in Onondaga County is provide some basic level of services, and then we were able to leverage through our relationship with Onondaga County a grant from the county so that we could really do an extensive public education and outreach program for them. So that's what the EPA money is really intended to do, is help us get into the communities, do basic facilitation, but then potentially leverage other larger projects. So for those of you who are working with communities throughout New Jersey, we stand ready to assist, and we're willing to talk to folks here. And you'll see, again, some of what we're talking about doing later on. So I think that's pretty much it. I think I'd like to turn it right over to Matt. I want Matt to really spend most of the time talking about what they're doing. Then I'll speak a little bit, and then also we have Amy Klinkhammer from our organization who's kind of in charge of the research component. We thought that's important for you to understand too, some of the things we're doing with research and how that really impacts acceleration of these technologies into the marketplace and into communities. So Matt and I have known each other for a while. He was the acting president of the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation. We call it the big EFC. We're the little EFC because they had all the money. They are the SRF program in New York State. Matt is really recognized as really one of the greatest progressive leaders for an SRF around the country during his tenure there. Done some great things at New York State, helped implement and get going a green infrastructure grant program that the state has now. And then fortunately he moved to our community in Onondaga County. And he's now the deputy county executive in Onondaga County and really charged with moving forward with these type of challenges and opportunities and strategies. So I'd like to turn it over to Matt.
He's nice. I like that. So good afternoon. You've stuck with me, I think, for about an hour now. I told my wife, though, I said, nobody wants to listen to me for an hour. So what I've tried to do is, as Mark mentioned, we've got a great story to tell, and I've tried to do it in a way that's interesting and hopefully exciting for you, because it is a beautiful Friday afternoon, and I want to make this very much worth your while. And I'm really thrilled to be here. And Madam Chair, thanks for the invitation. And Steve mentioned about traveling being a little tough. Fortunately, EPA helped support my travel a little bit, but also the real key element of why I'm here is because my boss, County Executive Joni Mahoney, doesn't want us to just succeed locally as a community. She encourages me to accept these invitations because she's very proud of what we're doing, but she also wants other communities to benefit from what we're doing. So I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're open sourcing our program, because we do want to be a resource for communities all over the country, and there's no better place for us to partner than New Jersey. We share a region, we share a climate, we share a lot of similarities as communities, and I think you'll hopefully take some important steps away from here on how to launch this on your own. So we call our program the Save the Rain program. My clicker's not working. Bummer. Is it plugged into the computer? All right, we got it. So for those of you that don't know, we are right in the central part of the state. We're called the Central New York region. This is a map of the state as well as the city of Syracuse. And the color-coded areas there are the sewer sheds where we're attacking our combined sewer problem. And the city of Syracuse, like many cities, has a 100-year-old sewer system that really was put in at a time when combined sewer seemed like a nifty idea, and now we know that they're really not. And rather than separating them all, what we're doing is a combined sewer overflow mitigation program under a federal consent order, which really started through a citizen lawsuit in 1988, and I'll get into some of the impacts of that. And that really explains why we're saving the rain. In 1998, we were sued for violations of the Clean Water Act. Onondaga Lake was one of the most polluted water bodies in the nation due to our contribution as a municipality with a poor wastewater treatment system, but also as a federal Superfund site. And Allied Chemical had put many, many thousands of tons of mercury and other fun things into Onondaga Lake, and it was time to clean it up. My boss ran for office, however, as a former city councilor who opposed the purely gray strategy to clean up Onondaga Lake. And there we go. What she opposed was the construction of these facilities, regional treatment facilities, and you can see inside the guts of it there. It's a storage system, but what was really opposed was these swirl concentrators, and this is a chlorine contact system, and then it would discharge into Onondaga Creek, which flows into Onondaga Lake. This was city property, which was taken through eminent domain by the county, because the city did not want this constructed in the neighborhood it was built in. It cost $70 million, and it activates maybe 10 or 15 times a year. This is the conveyance that needed to be constructed to hook up to that regional treatment facility right through this lovely neighborhood in the city of Syracuse. They hit bedrock, and they had to use dynamite to blow up the bedrock. And this community in no way, shape, or form wanted any of this done. But the county said to the city, but we have to do it. That's where the problem is. It was something that my boss felt very strongly about, and she ran for office as county executive in 2007. And one of her main pillars of her campaign was there has to be a better way than digging up our neighborhoods and building sewage treatment plants. And what she championed as a candidate and then as county executive was finding a balanced approach between gray and green. She did not abandon gray infrastructure, and I'll show you some of the gray. But she did say we need to take a step back. We were going to build 4 of those regional treatment facilities in Onondaga County. Only 1 was constructed. Come on, work with me here. So what we're doing is we're balancing the gray and the green. And I think it's very important to stress that as communities go forth and talk about using green infrastructure, that you don't scare everybody by saying we're just going to do green infrastructure and that's it, gray's off the table. In some cases that may work. I think Philadelphia's attempting to do almost entirely gray. New York City's doing gray and green. There's communities all over the country now that are doing this balanced approach of doing some pretty heavy-duty gray and also green infrastructure. And it starts with our wastewater treatment facility. We have a really state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility, which we invested $173 million in for advanced ammonia and phosphorus removal. And we always say that we built our green infrastructure program on top of this investment. Had we not made this investment, had we not improved our primary treatment system, the water quality levels would not have improved to a point where green infrastructure was a viable solution. So these investments were very important in helping us to advance to a green strategy. The Fourth Amendment is what my boss fought for in 2008. I was not on the staff at the time, but EPA, our Department of Environmental Conservation, which is the counterpart to the DEP here, the Attorney General, and the county petitioned the federal courts to amend the consent judgment, abandon the 4 RTF strategy, and move towards the balanced gray and green approach. And these are the sewer sheds we're targeting. Only 6.4% of our program is green infrastructure. The remainder of it still flows into a pretty heavy gray project list, and a fairly expensive one at that. And I'll show you some pictures of what we're doing. So that neighborhood that I showed you in the previous slide, this is the final extension of that conveyance and the final part of closing CSO 044. What we've avoided, though, is extending this much far beyond into the neighborhood, and we have about 6 CSOs which are going to capture through other means now rather than extending that pipeline even further into the neighborhood that didn't want it. And you can see that, conveyances are a little disruptive. We had to go right through the middle of this neighborhood, and this is called Skunk City. It's just a little community name. I'm not really sure where it came from, but it's unique. This was our federal stimulus program, but we had to build this interceptor sewer. This was part of the gray strategy that continued to advance. And this is a high school where we went right through their athletic field and right in front of their school building. But we did capture, you can see the little triangles are the CSOs that we were shutting off and putting into the interceptor sewer and now sending that waste to the wastewater treatment facility. Sewer separation is a component of the program. You can't rule anything out. And in this particular area of the county and the city, it was more advantageous to do a small sewer separation project, and this was funded somewhat by the Army Corps of Engineers. So we've got it all: sewer separation, green infrastructure, gray infrastructure, you name it, we're doing it. Storage was the key to deviating from the regional treatment facilities and having the gray and green, because the storage allows us to get the majority of what we need to achieve the water quality standards we're shooting for, but we're not building those swirl concentrators that I showed you and using chemicals and dosing the water and dumping it into the waterways with basically primary treatment. Instead, we're building these rather elegant underground facilities, and majority of this will be underground. And we're using green techniques on all of these as well. We're capturing all the stormwater that hits this rooftop and using it to flush and clean the system out. Instead of using potable water, we'll be using the stormwater to keep the system clean and in working function. And this was a location where in 2008 the county executive had 4 days to decide if she was going to execute contracts which had been bid and were ready to be awarded to construct another one of those regional treatment facilities right here, which is next to our commercial, residential, burgeoning nightlife area called Armory Square. And the previous administration had thought it would be a great idea to build a wastewater treatment plant there, and my boss said, no, we're not doing it. And on the 5th day of her term, she said, we're not doing it. She refused to sign the contracts, and now instead we're building this pretty remarkable storage system where we're building 6 million gallons of subsurface storage in this parking lot. And that will be when the first flush of the storm comes through. We'll store it in these 3 giant chambers that are underground in the parking lot. It'll be stored there until the wastewater treatment plant has capacity, and we'll send it down through the system to be treated at the wastewater treatment plant with that advanced ammonia phosphorus removal, again, rather than doing simply the primary treatment and dumping it into Onondaga Creek. It's no small project, though. I mean, we've got a great firm, Jet Industries, which is a part of Kiewit, which is a national construction firm, and it's $70 million, and they're doing some serious work. I mean, this is the opposite of building a rain garden is this. This doesn't get more gray. And we're also doing the same thing there, though, where we're capturing all the storm water and using it to flush the system out. And there's an old armory that's now a Museum of Science and Technology. We're going to take the roof leaders off of that and hook it into our stormwater capture system and use the stormwater from the roof of that facility to also flush the system out. And now the fun part, though, is the green infrastructure. So all of that builds the foundation of now saying, all right, we want to do green infrastructure, and how do we do it? And we were talking a little bit earlier about how do you even get started? And my advice, my very sincere advice, is don't try to do it on your own. If you've never done green infrastructure, it's very unlikely that you have people on your staff that are going to really have a good background and experience with doing something completely different and new than what they've been doing their entire careers. And where we were very successful was hiring CH2M Hill, and it doesn't have to be CH2M Hill, it can be any firm that has experience with this, to be our program managers. And they really helped us as an external partner to design a strategy that was going to be effective from an environmental perspective and a financial perspective, using our SWIM modeling, using some GIS technologies, putting together a system for us. And it took about a year for them to build it, but they've built a great system now where I can call them up and I say, hey, we just walked down this street and we saw this building and it looks like the parking lot's falling apart. Can we fix that parking lot? And within 3 days, they can come back to me with a GIS analysis of it and give me a projection of how much it might cost to do the parking lot, what the capture may be. Just a fantastic model that they built for us to do scenario modeling on any project that we can dream up. We heard about the green infrastructure from likely source. Natural Resources Defense Council is a great champion of green infrastructure and has been for some time. And they published this book in 2006. And Nancy Stoner, who's now an assistant administrator, I believe she's an assistant administrator or acting assistant administrator at EPA, brought this book to County Executive Mahoney, and she said, read this, think about this. And this was in that period of time when they were debating whether or not to move forward and how they could change their strategy. And my boss read this book and believed what it said about taking communities that are pretty dense, pretty impervious, and using green strategies to get moving. So our plan fits on one sheet of paper. Brian Marengo, who works for us at CH2M Hill, and we saw him yesterday, he said it well when he said, if you can't fit your plan on one piece of paper, don't bother doing it. And this is our entire green infrastructure strategy in a nutshell right here, is we need to capture 250 million gallons of rainwater by 2018 using various green infrastructure technologies around those areas that I showed you in the map, the color-coded areas. And we have streets, parks, public facilities, voluntary, which I'll get into, our Green Improvement Fund. We have ordinance issues we have to get through. We want to put in place in the city of Syracuse an aggressive stormwater ordinance similar to what Philadelphia has done, which is an interesting thing to do when you want to have the city adopt an ordinance and you happen to work for the county. There's a challenge there. Some discussions need to be had. But you'll notice, if you can see it, our ordinance is about 19% of our program. So it's very important to us that we get that partnership from the city and the adoption of that stormwater ordinance in place in order to get to our objective in a cost-effective way. And as far as our ideas go, back to that GIS model, this slide was used when Onondaga County went back to the federal courts, and Federal Justice Scullin is his name, and petitioned him for a change in course. This exact picture was presented to him, and he was told, look at the potential capture we can get in this very small slice of the city of Syracuse, and we can get 10 million gallons in capture just by putting a parking lot here, 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 a green roof, a cistern, bioretention. They said, how could we not achieve 250 million gallons if we can get to 10 million right here? I think that this slide was very compelling, and that's why the judge kind of came along with us and gave us the opportunity to give it a try. So the exciting part is now 3 years into the program, we've taken this concept, and we said we want to do a green roof, so we did it. We now have 66,000 green roof, 66,000 square foot green roof on top of our convention center, and there we're putting some coconut fiber cover on it to make sure it didn't get windblown when it was maturing, and now it's starting to biodegrade a bit. So we only got to see it green for a short period of time, but now it's biodegrading a little bit, and hopefully it takes about 18 months to 2 years for it to really kind of establish itself. But I can see this from my window, and it's been really remarkable to see it kind of unfold as one of our marquee projects in 2011. The Cistern Project. This is an old War Memorial Auditorium. It was built after World War II, as many communities built their auditoriums, and you got to be careful with historic structures. You don't want to impose green infrastructure on something where it's not really appropriate. So rather than doing a green roof, the opportunity here was to do a cistern in the basement. And one of our facilities managers said, well, if we're putting a cistern in the basement, why don't we use the rainwater for something rather than just putting in a cistern and watering the lawn with it? And we decided that a good use of it would be to put the system in and then use it to make ice for our professional hockey team that plays in the auditorium. So I think we still have the claim to fame of having the only professional hockey team in the country that plays on rainwater. Its payback period, I think, is about 224 years. So you really can't do it if you're trying to save money on potable water for ice. But it is kind of a neat thing to have the hockey team playing on rainwater. The parking lots. The parking lots were a great example of how we can take something that doesn't look so great in the community, and there really was no financial resources in the facilities budget to fix these parking lots. So we kind of just accepted the fact that we had a, as you can see there, not so good parking lot right at our county capital and our county offices. Instead, we invested some green infrastructure dollars into the parking lot. This is really just conventional asphalt, but in the middle we have our porous strips, and this captures 100% of the stormwater that hits this facility up to a 1-inch design storm, maybe a little bit more, and it all stays on site and goes through these strips as well as around the perimeter. And it sure looks a lot better than it used to. And that was an investment that never would have been made by the county had we not had the Save the Rain program in place. It just wasn't a budgetary priority to go out and redo parking lots. But the sewer department was able to go to the county facilities department and fix their parking lot, get the stormwater capture they needed, and also it just looks a heck of a lot better. And people use this lot when they come down and go to the War Memorial and go to hockey games and go to events at the Civic Center, and we feel a lot better about what we're representing ourselves as a community now. And then another big lot, which is right next to the facility with the green roof on it. This is another exciting part about green infrastructure, is you don't do the same thing twice. The last parking lot had the strips down the middle. This parking lot has asphalt, porous asphalt perimeter. So rather than digging this up, there was potential petroleum issues on the site, and you absolutely can do green infrastructure on sites that might have questionable environmental legacy. You just have to be aware of it. You have to deal with it. So rather than digging up the entire parking lot, we just worked around the perimeter, and we capture 100% of the rainfall that hits that with porous asphalt around the perimeter. This is construction going on. You can see how they chewed it up, and you put your sub base in. You can see how you want to make sure you use an appropriate sub base so you get the infiltration. But it's a great thing about green infrastructure. It's pretty simple when you get to executing it. It's hard to do from a policy and programming level, but when you get to the real construction part, it's really not all that complex. These are memos that are produced after projects are finished, and these are all available on our website, and I'll talk about that a little later on in the program. But you can see how we do our metrics and we do our budgeting. Is we bid it for $529,000, but 1.6 million gallons in capture towards my goal of 250 million gallons. So it's a great investment for us. We get a really significant amount of capture, a good investment, plus again it just looks much better as a facility. We can have a much more sense of pride in our facilities by having some new construction. And we also added LED lights when we put it in. If we're going green, we might as well go all the way. Rather than putting conventional lights in, we put in LED lights, and we also put in electric car charging stations. While we're digging up a lot anyway, why not put the conduit in and put in 14 electric car charging stations? I don't think we have 14 electric cars in Onondaga County, but we have 14 electric car charging stations. So chicken and egg problem there. This is really cool. This is a recent success story that just finished up a couple of weeks ago, and I was happy to add it to the program. Syracuse used to have 225,000 people maybe at its highest point. Now it's about 145,000 people, and like many cities, we have great, big, huge streets that there really aren't that many cars on most of the time. So we worked with the city, and this was a tremendous opportunity for partnership with them, where we asked the city, as we're expanding our program footprint, trying to execute projects, is can we take some of this? And then we showed them this picture, and we said, can we just take a few feet of this roadway, which really isn't all that busy anyway, and build this green strip in it, and get the stormwater off of this roadway and off this sidewalk, and get some significant capture. And the city works very well with us on this, and I'll talk about our partnership a little later. But the great part is, very rarely does reality often meet with the designs, and it's really a remarkable improvement to the streetscape. It has not affected traffic at all whatsoever, and it's just another great success for the program to see concept to reality. And you'll see here, this is the overflow valves, and these flow throughout. And again, you're designing these to the design storm. You're not trying to capture the 3-inch storm that happens, the 100-year storm, the 50-year storm. You need to have these overflows built into it so it can go into the combined system if you have a really heavy rain event. This is designed for the 1-inch, 2-hour storm. Anything in excess of that will generally flow through your overflows. So we went from our concept, the pitch that we made to the judge, trust us, we'll do this, let us try it, and we went and we did it all, and now we've just got this remarkable success story around our civic strip. And it is no coincidence, though, that the county executive's office is right there. And she gets to look over her little green empire now and feel good about all the work we're doing. So I think that was good staff work to make sure we got all this work done first. In 2011, what we were trying to do in 2011, we called it Project 50, and this is a different approach than, say, what Philadelphia's been doing. New York City's catching up to us a little bit. Philadelphia has spent a lot of time on their ordinance, on doing stormwater fee structures, on doing a voluntary program where they've now added a grant component to it, and I think they just inked their final agreement recently. But they haven't done a tremendous amount of green infrastructure execution at this point, and I think they'll do way more than we've ever done in Syracuse over the next 10 or 20 years. But at this point, they hadn't executed a lot of projects. Neither had New York City. What we wanted to do in Syracuse in 2011 was just do a lot of projects, just get them done so we can show this community how important this program is. Having one parking lot done, when I got to Syracuse in 2010, I moved in just about 2 years ago, they had one parking lot done. And I got so sick of hearing about one parking lot. It's every meeting we go to, they talk about the one parking lot. I'm just tired. Nobody's even allowed to talk about that parking lot anymore. I don't want to hear about it. It's called the Farmers Market parking lot. And I think from a community standpoint, what's really important with Project 50 was to just go all over the city, kind of shotgun it a little bit, use our model, be strategic, but just do as much as we possibly could. And I asked the program team, C.H. Truham Hill and our Department of Water and Environment Protection, I said, could you guys do 50 projects in 2011? And based on all the footwork that they'd done in 2010, they kind of hesitantly said, I think so. And we really just, the team worked incredibly hard last year. They put together a pretty significant plan in November of 2010, where we ultimately ended up last year, I think, doing 62 projects. I don't expect you to read that, but I'll talk more about the website and how it's on there. But all over the city of Syracuse, green streets, parking lots, green roofs, cisterns, anything you can think of is now in action, in motion, constructed and finished, or under construction now. And the great news is we've gotten really far along. At the end of this year, we'll have 108 million gallons of capture in the first 3 years of the program. And it really is just going to get more level, 22 million gallons a year going forward, which gives us the opportunity to be more strategic and more thoughtful about where we deploy the green infrastructure to target the CSOs that are really the problems and show the most opportunity for us to make a difference with green infrastructure. And this is a really super example of how you can make an investment that accomplishes your objective, again, from a water quality standpoint and a capture standpoint. This is City Hall in Syracuse. It's a pretty historic architectural building, and this was just a horrible example of the decay of urban America. There were sewer collapses along this sidewalk. The sidewalk was really chewed up, and there was no money in the city to repair this. And again, this is right outside of City Hall, and it was just kind of left to be what it was, which was not very nice. Somebody brought this to us from the community who had a landscape architect on their staff, and they did this pro bono and offered it to us, and they said, why don't we fix this street up? This is an important street in our community. Can we work with you in the program to do this? And I brought it to the county executive, and I said, what do you think of this? I said, this is pretty unique. And she said, let's do it. This is great. It's a real gateway to downtown Syracuse, and we wanted to execute it. And I'm really happy to be here today and show you that we did it. It's done. This was phase one where we did the sidewalks. These are all permeable trenches, which also have Silva-Cell technologies in them. Silva-Cells allow tree plantings to expand their root system much further than a conventional urban planting would be. We want to ensure when we plant trees that they have space to grow. We want high trees with lots of canopy, and the Silva-Cells make sure that the trees will be healthy and grow in a natural manner. And you can just see that, and these are all porous pavers that we put in the parking spaces. And it just looks beautiful with the new sidewalks, the bioretention, the plantings, the tree plantings, which will grow up and just be remarkable large trees, and the new paintings that goes on the streetscape. When you're working with the city comes in and does this, and the bike lanes were put in. And, you know, we went from this as an unimproved street that really wasn't on anybody's radar to fix for anything to just a beautiful streetscape now that has changed the entire tone of this corridor, which goes into the downtown entertainment district. So we're really proud of that project, and it cost about $1 million to do it, and we capture about 1 million gallons. Our general metric that we use systematically is to achieve, on margin, about a 35 cents per gallon target. So that project was $1 a gallon, as I mentioned, and I think that's an important policy point, though, because sometimes you got to deviate from your rules when you're making a statement. And for us, that project's a very important statement to the community, and we hold it up and highlight it as an important investment that was made to show the city what this program was all about. And we'll make up for that deviation from the mean on other projects where we get 2 or 3 million gallons in capture for 7 or 8 cents a gallon. So the objective is not that every project must be 35 cents a gallon. The model is that we hope at the end of the day the median price will be 35 cents a gallon when we get to the end of the program. Oh, sorry. Green roofs. This is a green roof. That's a private building. This was done through our Green Improvement Fund. We have an entire program outside of the municipal projects that we're doing where private sector owners can come to us and say, I want to put a green roof on my building, and we will do an engineering analysis with them, you know, make sure that they're not putting a green roof on something that can't support it, and we will give them a grant to do the green roof, and we sign a 10-year agreement with them where they not only commit to building the system, but they also have a maintenance agreement within their 10-year contract where we provide them with maintenance training, and they agree within their contract, they're contractually bound to provide the maintenance that we subscribe to them when we sign the grant agreement. This is another private property that benefited from the Green Improvement Fund. These are all porous pavers here. This is the first LEED Platinum hotel in Syracuse, and we were very pleased to participate in the pavers there. The porous pavers were something that I don't believe the owner of the hotel would have done in the absence of the Green Improvement Fund program, but because we were able to partner with him, we got a nice amount of capture, and he really had a great improvement to this already pretty remarkable project. Basketball courts. We really wanted to do basketball court. Parks. You do parking lots. You see streetscapes. I showed you the green roofs. Basketball courts are cool because the community touches it all the time. And you may have heard of Jim Boeheim. He's the coach of the Syracuse basketball team. And his foundation, his family foundation, him and his wife, they do a basketball court a year in the city of Syracuse. And we partnered with the Boeheim Foundation. And we said, if you're going to do a basketball court, let's work together, and we'll do porous asphalt basketball courts. And last year we were able to do 2. And this is one of the more depressed neighborhoods in the city of Syracuse called the Near West Side. I think it's a census tract. It's one of the most impoverished census tracts in the nation, and it's somewhere where Syracuse University, the county, and the city are working to really redevelop this community and really bring it up to where it should be as a mixed-use, wonderful community where people have a vibrant and healthy economy. And part of that is fixing up their playgrounds. And these are both porous asphalt, and then we are also installing FlexiPave, which is porous material that's a little bit more rubbery than the asphalt along all of this area here. So we're really excited about this. Is a pretty significant playground project for us, and it's a great partnership with the Boeheim Foundation. And now this year we hope to be doing 3 more basketball courts with the foundation as well. We have a rain barrel program. I think a rain barrel program is important as a community is pushing forward and trying to educate the community and ask for their help. The rain barrels, they accomplish something. When you put them in the model and you show 6,000 homes with rain barrels, it does have a water quality benefit, but it also gives homeowners an opportunity to participate in the program without having to do a tremendous amount of work. They go, they pick up a rain barrel, they hook it up, and then they've got fresh water to do gardening and water their lawn with if they so wish. And we're really trying to build a robust rain barrel program, and we're using social media, and we try to make sure we tweet out to people when the weather's nice like today. You send a note out that says, now's a good time to empty your rain barrel, because it's ineffective for us to give somebody a rain barrel, have it fill up once and just sit there full for the entire season. You want to make sure that they're emptying it regularly so you get that benefit when it does rain. And we paint rain barrels. Painting rain barrels has proven to be very popular. If any of you do advance a rain barrel program, I strongly suggest you adopt this strategy, because this has just gotten people so excited about it when they get to come out with their kids and their kids paint their rain barrels and then they bring them home and put them in their house, and it's become an interesting little buzz in the community. Syracuse University, Mark mentioned his affiliation with Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. This is a great example of the university, the city, and the county all getting together, which historically had never happened. Historically, there was dissension, strife, and agendas that didn't match. This is an example of the complete opposite of this, where all of our agendas came together. And the reason this is called the Connective Corridor is that Syracuse University is up here on a pretty high hill and not really connected to the downtown part of the city of Syracuse. So the chancellor of Syracuse University said that she would support one of her staff members who wanted to advance this notion of a connective corridor, of having a defined corridor where students would hop on buses here and travel this route down to Armory Square, where we're building that big storage system I mentioned, and have this entire corridor be architecturally focused on connecting the university to downtown. They were already in the design phase, and we met with them and we said, can we add green infrastructure to this? In consultation with the city and the designers that were working for the university, and they said absolutely. We got involved in phase 1, and we've added a lot of the tree pits and the silver cells that I mentioned before, adding in some pretty significant green infrastructure elements, and we're going to get 2 or 3 million gallons in capture on working on this project with Syracuse University and the city of Syracuse. And this is one of the parks that was in that map that I showed you, and we've invested quite a bit into some of the green enhancements to this park facility. And then one of our major projects that we're running into a little bit of trouble with, because it's never easy, is building a treatment wetland. And this is a discharge point, an actual CSO discharge right here. And what we want to build is a treatment wetland there. We're going to test 3 different types of wetland systems in partnership with the SUNY School of Environmental Science and Forestry, and really try to learn which treatment technology in the wetland setting is the most effective at removing nutrients, potentially harmful bacteria, and things of that nature. We're going to spend about $4 million on this and really have a serious research component to the project. But at the end of the day, the interesting part is, from a regulatory perspective, because the CSO, if I put it on this side, it would be a non-point source treatment system. But since I'm putting it on this side, it's a point source treatment system. And regulatorily, we're looking at that as a treatment system, and it needs to basically act like a wastewater treatment plant. And as we're finding out, you can't make a wetland act like a wastewater treatment plant. And we prefer to take the wetland approach. What we talk about with the wetland, the greatest part about a wetland is you don't need to plug it in. You don't need to buy chemicals. You don't need to have chlorine disinfecting. So it's an interesting regulatory discussion that we're having, and I raise it because it's just an element of the program. It's not smooth sailing. It's not always easy. You're going to have these dialogues, and sometimes the rules don't necessarily fit a new way of doing it. So stay tuned for that one. We're trying to get the permits in place in the next few weeks. Education and outreach is a key component. I add this in there, but I know Mark's going to talk a lot about it. This is our team. We've invested probably a little over $1 million so far in education and outreach. One of the key elements I'm going to talk about, and not steal Mark's story, is our website. Well, when I got to the county, we had just launched the Save the Rain website, and we set a goal managerially that 95% of any question that's asked of us for the program should be answered on the website. When we say steal these projects, we're putting all of the plans and specifications for every single project online, available to anybody who would like them. I don't encourage you to go out and bid them or anything like that, but take a look at them. You can see this is a parking lot project we did. It's 100% porous asphalt. We've got a tremendous amount of capture out of it, and we put all the technical drawings online. So if you're interested, if you have engineering staff that says, I want to see how this stuff works, you can go to our website, get the CAD drawings, get the technical specifications that we bid out, see the after-action memos that were drafted by CH2M Hill, learn where our change orders came in. All of it's up there for every single project. We have fact sheets. The fact sheets kind of lay out correctly the facts, how much we're spending on these, what our capture is. We do this for a number of reasons, but we think the community that's investing in this, it's their money. They should have access to all the information about these projects and know how much we're spending on each one and why this one was a cost-effective one. Maintenance. What about the maintenance? I'm sure some of you might be sitting out there saying, yes, but what about the maintenance? So I put it in here. I asked the question for you. Maintenance is a key issue, and I encourage you on our website to take a look at our rather hefty Green Infrastructure Maintenance Training Manual. We take the maintenance issue very seriously. It's something that's a big liability for anybody that's doing a green infrastructure program. You have to get the maintenance right, because the maintenance issue is the first thing that people will use to talk themselves out of doing a green infrastructure program. Gray infrastructure requires maintenance too, so maintenance shouldn't be new. It's not a new notion to think that we have to take care of these things that we build. We have to do it in a different way. And this maintenance manual talks about the best way to approach a parking lot. The porous asphalt parking lot I showed you with the electric car charging stations. The porous asphalt around the perimeter needs to be vacuumed twice a year. We need to make sure that's done on a regular basis, or it'll fill in with materials and debris and become ineffective. So we have to do a schedule to do that. We have to do our life cycle analysis, just like you would for any gray infrastructure. You should have a life cycle analysis on it. Here we have a rain garden analysis, and you can see level of service declining. We put it in an 11. By 2018, mathematically you can predict that its level of service is going to decline over time. And then you build in your maintenance plan. You invest a little bit of money, and the level of service climbs back up again. And you need to do this for every single project. And we intend to, using our asset management system. We use an asset management system called Maximo. It doesn't have to be Maximo. It could be any system. But we want to use that system to tell us when the level of service hits a level that requires an investment. We budget on our capital planning budget to make sure that we have the appropriate funding that we need to make that investment in the targeted year. This is just a screenshot of the asset management system, and it talks about porous pavement vacuuming. So this is the city lot number 3, and it just shows the steps that the system asks you to go through. And really what we're striving to do, and I just throw this in here to remind me to mention, is we're striving to have a web-based application where we partner with community groups. We hear a lot about green jobs and how can this help create green jobs. I don't necessarily believe that we need to have municipal employees out vacuuming parking lots and cleaning out rain gardens and cleaning out bioswales. But we can work with community groups that are doing green job training and trying to get people entry-level jobs and get them involved in this program. And what we hope to do is have grants available to them where they will be linked up through hopefully remote technologies like this. This is a Panasonic ToughPad that just came out. I think we need something a little tougher than an iPad, but having it so they could go into their community headquarters, Green Job Corps, and get their work orders for the day on the system and go out and use this to track their work, but it also automatically updates our asset management system. Let's avoid all the paperwork that comes with it and have it directly linked into our system, and then you remove the need for invoicing, you remove the need for massive file cabinets of useless material, and instead you're linked right into our asset management system. So that's an objective we have. We haven't gotten there yet, but I say it publicly so the staff knows that I'm serious. And we've come a really long way. It was great. EPA has been tremendously supportive. Bob Perciasepi, who Steve mentioned, is a champion of green infrastructure within the department. He's also a graduate of Syracuse University, so he came last April to award Syracuse the designation of being one of the top 10 green infrastructure communities in the nation. And we're really pleased to have that. And again, that gets back to doing the 50 projects and being really aggressive about deploying these, because I think it helps EPA tell the story as well when they said you can do it. Look at what they're doing in Onondaga County. They are getting projects in the ground, and we were thrilled to have Bob come up and spend a day with us. And I mentioned earlier how Rooftops to Rivers really influenced the county executive and her thinking about green infrastructure, and I think a real good testament to her leadership on this is that we're now in Rooftops to Rivers 2 as one of the demonstration communities that NRDC puts out to show that green infrastructure is spreading, and we've got a lot more cities now using green infrastructure as a strategy than they did when they published the first version. And that was sad because Philadelphia beat us. They got 6 stars and we only had 5, but that's because we don't have our ordinance done yet, which I mentioned. So we're still working on that. But 5 stars is a win when you go from not even being in the book in the first one, and we're 5 stars in version 2. What's been really interesting about this entire discussion is going back to the regional treatment facilities and the county imposing their will on the city and saying we're going to build them. The city complained and the county said, but that's where the problem is. We need to address it. Sorry, that's where we're going to build the regional treatment facilities. When we started doing the green infrastructure in the city, the suburban legislators started saying, when are you going to start doing some of that green infrastructure out in the suburbs? And the county executive took great pleasure in saying, the problem's not in the suburbs, the problem's in the city, so we're going to do green infrastructure in the city. So we had a little fun with that for a brief period of time, but at the end of the day, green infrastructure does make sense in the suburban communities. Your MS4 communities, different challenges than CSOs, but challenges nonetheless. And we now have a $3 million suburban green infrastructure program, which we just announced 14 projects moving forward. And what we did is we just put a call for projects out, and we said, see what you can do. And they came back to us, almost 12 communities. We have 35 municipalities in Onondaga County. 12 of them came to us with great ideas, really great projects, mainly at town halls, DPW garages, really aggressive thinking, though, and I think it showed that the engineering community is also getting on board and getting the message, because their local engineers really helped them to design some really strong strategies, and we're going to award the $3 million for the 14 projects. I think the legislature is poised to approve it the first week of July. So we're really excited that we have some momentum in the suburban communities now, and they're moving forward on their own paths and doing their own projects, but it's because they were excited about what they were seeing in the city. They saw a water street, and they said, we should be doing something like that too, and now they are. The results have really just been remarkable. As I mentioned, the improvements to the wastewater treatment facility, as well as the work that's advancing now, have led to the lake just recovering much faster than any model or scientists could even predict. At one time, I think we were down to about 6 species in the lake. The ammonia levels were so high it was completely inhospitable, and it was anoxic many times throughout the year. And I think at the lowest point of the lake's history, 6 species were identifiable. We now have 66 species that have been identified through biological research, and just on May 28th, they caught this guy in Onondaga Lake. It's a tiger muskie, and that's a darn big fish. So if he's in there, that means he's got plenty of food. So I think it's just a great sign of a healthy ecosystem, and we did throw him back in. And the phosphorus levels. One of the key elements of the program is to contain the CSOs, but also get the phosphorus levels down, remove the eutrophication that was going on, the anoxia in the lake. 120 micrograms per liter at the highest point when the wastewater treatment plant was just dumping tons of phosphorus into the lake and really affecting the ecosystem. Right now we're on target of 20 micrograms per liter, which is what our permitted levels are for the lake, and it's just been a remarkable transformation, and that comes down to the investment that we made in the wastewater treatment facility, and hopefully the green infrastructure will help to ensure that we stay at these levels. So that's our gray and the green, and you notice I do put them together. It wouldn't work without one, and it really wouldn't work without the other. We're really on the right path here, I think, to achieve the objectives that were first fought for in 1988 when the lawsuit was filed and we were violating the Clean Water Act. But now we have, Philadelphia is famous for their triple bottom line study that they did. We really do see the environmental benefits, the economic benefits, and the social benefits. I think you've seen some of the pictures here that I presented today can show how you can really transform a community by making some of these investments and really getting people excited about capturing rainwater. Most of them don't really care that we're capturing rainwater. What they care about is they got a new basketball court and that Water Street looks better, and that the parking lot at the On Center looks good when they take their kids to go see a show. But we're getting the capture that we need, and they're excited about their community. So at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun to work on it, and I enjoy coming out and talking about it, so I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to tell the story today. And I do encourage you to check out our website. We are doing a redesign of it, which will be launched in July. We'll make sure we get the announcement out to you when it's new, but hopefully all the information you could ask for will be up there, but we're certainly always available to follow up and answer any questions. And I'll turn it over to Mark, and I look forward to your questions when he's finished. So thank you.
That was great, Matt. Thanks. So I'm going to go pretty quick. So I only want to do a few slides, and then really we want to open it up to some question and answers. So I'm sure you have a lot from what you just heard, and I also want to give Amy a chance to talk about a couple of things briefly. So yeah, let's start here. Now what I did is, in case Matt's Prezi didn't work, the first 29 slides here are some duplicates of what you have from Matt, so I'm not going to go through those. So I'm going to go right to slide 30. But for those of you who, it's okay, I'll do it. I'll click through. So for those of you who have, they're going to get access to both of these presentations, right? So you'll have two ways to get access to the pictures and slides. So that's why I decided to keep those slides in for you. So just bear with me as I go through it. But before I do that, I wanted to, listening to Matt, there were a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, kind of to give an overview. He talked about the NRDC report that was given to the county executive, and I don't want to understate what challenge Joni Mahoney had back in 2006. It was substantial. She was talking about shutting down construction projects that were well on their way to moving forward. And that's jobs. And that's jobs in upstate New York where the unemployment rate is super high. She was facing a lot of political opposition from some of the companies that represented these jobs, some of the local engineering firms. So what she did is apparently some people ask Matt, well, how do you start? Well, that's really what I want to focus on, is how do you start, how do you engage people? But what she did a couple of things that were very smart. She reached out to other people in the community that were quote-unquote opinion leaders. And one of those was the Chancellor for Syracuse University, Nancy Cantor. So I remember being asked to go give a briefing to the Chancellor in 2007 about what is this green infrastructure thing, is it worthwhile, and should we get behind the county exec on this? And of course the answers were all yes. So I'm sure that she did that with a number of people in the community to get people behind her, and then she made that bold decision to go with a combination. Because it was also an environmental justice issue. Matt showed some of those neighborhoods we're talking about, again, some of the most impoverished neighborhoods in Syracuse. So clearly it was an environmental justice issue. It's interesting, the Chancellor asked me, though, she kind of threw a curveball at me, and she goes, well, if we're not going to build a treatment facility behind Armory Square with all the boutique shops, what you're saying is we're going to start putting rain gardens and green infrastructure solutions into people's neighborhoods, and they're going to take the responsibility? Tell me how that's not an environmental justice issue. So it was an interesting spin on her part, but you can see that, and you'll see here, one of the ways we address that is by engaging people directly and showing them the direct benefits they get of participating in this. And Matt showed you that. But I never expected that question. I never thought of pushing the solutions out into the neighborhoods, these green solutions, as being potentially environmental justice issues. So it was interesting. So the EPA, and Steve and I had this discussion way back in 2006, and back then Ben Grumbles was the Assistant Administrator for Water, actually asked the Environmental Finance Centers to be the boots on the ground for the EPA to promote green infrastructure. So that's kind of how we got involved in this. The other overall theme that I saw that I think is important for you to understand as we talk to communities about how to implement these things is this is clearly a public-private partnership. This is a public-private solution. Matt said, don't go it alone. We're going to see you already saw some examples of that. He talked about bringing on a highly regarded engineering firm, for instance. But you're going to see some other examples of partnerships that have been developed that without those partnerships, it probably wouldn't be as successful as it is. Okay, so let me just fly through these really quick. I talked about this earlier, so. All right, so you're going to get a bunch of other things talking. And some of this is probably useful as we start to look at developing education for citizens, just having people understand, for instance, the water cycle and issues like that. So I think some of these slides will be useful for you folks later on. Talking a little bit more about CSOs and really what that is. I know everybody in this room understands that, but we found these type of slides to be useful as we're doing education with people. Again, just showing people pictures of what we're talking about here, all the different types of GI technologies that are available. Matt talked about most of these. There's the lake, Onondaga Lake. A little bit more about the history, so you've got that, all the details there on the dates that Matt talked about, and a little bit about the watershed. There are some of the environmental justice issues. So you see people were somewhat agitated about this during the early 2000s. There's the county executive. So again, Matt went over most of this. And that Green Improvement Fund, I think, is one of the best things the county did, so that allowing the private sector to participate in this. So bear with me, I'm almost there. And the zoo, Matt talked a little bit about that. Okay. So the key with the education and outreach program, before I talk about this slide, is really establishing those collaborations with other organizations in your community, other groups that maybe already have been involved in issues like this, other environmental groups, other nonprofits, other community groups. And one of the first things that was done in Syracuse was a survey. 2 universities participated in the survey of five neighborhoods. And it was just really to kind of get a feel for the attitudes towards green infrastructure. So those are some of the areas that we looked at. And this is what those surveys said, and this helped inform some of our future decisions about this. People really aren't into trees. And we think when we looked into this further, it was really about security. So this gets at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that the first thing people are interested and concerned about is their own security. We've been able to address that issue. You go back and talk to people about how we're not planting bushes that people can hide behind, that these are trees with just a trunk. But it's interesting to hear this from people, and they're very easy to address these issues, but you don't know what the issues are until you survey people. They felt that maintenance of rain gardens is a significant barrier, but as Matt said, there's maintenance with any kind of technology you're putting out there. And once explained to people what it takes, it's really not that big a deal. Again, Matt talked about the effective use of rain barrels, that you actually have to use the water. That's an interesting challenge that we've had to overcome. And if it's free, then count me in. Of course, that's the way lots of people think. But once you start talking to people about return on investment and longer-term savings and externalities, and you really explain what those things mean, people kind of buy into it. So in our case, for public education and outreach, these are the partners that we reached out to. Onondaga Environmental Institute, been around for a long time, been involved in the lake cleanup. Really critical that we involve a group that has had substantial involvement with Onondaga Lake issues. It's important to involve groups that have a lot more expertise than you do about how to educate, for instance, youth. Baltimore Woods Nature Center, for instance. May not have spent a lot of time educating people on green infrastructure, but understand the types of approaches, education strategies that you need to deploy to get the attention of youth in this particular case. Onondaga Earth Corps is actually a group that engages youth from disadvantaged neighborhoods, so people from the core, the urban core, getting them actually directly engaged in education, outreach, and construction of green infrastructure solutions, get their hands involved in this. These people then become some of the best ambassadors that you have. They're going to go out and their peers and others will listen to them much more than they'd listen to somebody like me. And then also universities. So you've got the Environmental Science and Forestry College down on the right. So when Amy talks a little bit about some of the other university engagements, you'll see that in that case there's some real needs to get your universities and particularly community colleges involved as well. So collaboration is the key for public education and outreach when we're talking about implementing new strategies like this. So for us, for education and outreach, we don't really do the advertising. I'll show you a picture at the end. Maybe Matt can talk a little bit more about the whole ad budget and the approach they're taking there. So this is really boots on the ground training and education that we're doing. And I'm not going to go through each one of those numbers. You'll get this. But you can see that these are the metrics. This is the data we have on how many groups we've reached and the types of strategies that we've deployed. 1,000+ doors knocked down. So we're getting right out there in the community, again, using Onondaga Earth Corps and other groups. Matt talked about the social media. That's key as well. So this is the strategy. Introduction to green infrastructure for businesses. We hold workshops targeted towards that audience. Again, we do audience analysis. We tweak our strategies depending on what audience we're going to be talking to. Green infrastructure for new homeowners. That's a different approach than businesses. General community workshops, rain barrel workshops, workshops for landscape professionals. Again, if you look at all these, you can see you definitely need to take a different approach with all of these. Demonstration of GI technologies and products such as pervious products. Different approach for youth. Using art, really critical to use art, especially when you're working with children. Nature in the city as a broad topic to explore with people. Working in high school classrooms, that's one of the things that the Environmental Science and Forestry School has done, and exhibiting at events. We also have done design charrettes, and demonstration projects are critical as well. So some more data on some of the workshops. And Matt showed you a couple pictures, and I don't think you can overemphasize this either. Getting people involved with things like this has been just extremely beneficial. Word-of-mouth education spreads like wildfire, and really some really cool art. Workshops in the neighborhood run by neighborhood leaders. Parades in the communities. Many of our staff and others. In fact, the county executive participates in these parades frequently. And community design forums and charrettes. Again, get people involved. And these charrettes, this one was in particular with a park in Syracuse in the university neighborhood, having people have a say in what the green infrastructure looks like in their community. And the county takes this seriously. They take this input very seriously as they design the technologies. So developing the vision and design ideas at the neighborhood scale. This is another example of a rain garden put at a community leader. So working with recognized leaders in neighborhoods and communities, again, as a demonstration project, if people like this buy into these kind of strategies, then others in the neighborhood will as well. And just some more examples of some of the green infrastructure technologies that are deployed, before and after shots. This is in the near West Side neighborhood as well. And then really having a celebration about it all, involving local leaders to the Environmental Earth Corps, for instance, on the right-hand side. This is one of the first rain gardens built in the city. Matt talked about some of the publications. We purposely didn't bring these with us. We also are promoting waste reduction. We want to drive you to the websites. So go to these websites. There's a wealth of information, and you'll find a lot of documents there that you can download. Again, targeted to various age groups and audiences. And that's the website. Matt put it up there, but you'll have it, savetherain.us. All the projects are there. And then Matt, maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the ad, the approach that you've taken there?
Yeah, it's been evolving. Mark mentioned recycling and waste, and we've had a very successful recycling campaign in Onondaga County with Blue Bin It and getting people to use the blue bins. And there was a good advertising campaign for it, but we were asking each homeowner to take action. So with this, it's a little different because you're not really asking everybody to do something. So we've been having an internal debate. Really, when we launched Project 50, we did purchase some billboards and just try to get the word out in the community. It was really helpful when Bob Percisetti came into town, and one of the billboards was right on I-81 as we were driving into the city. So strategically, it was well placed that day to say, "Look, Bob, that's our program there." And he goes, "That's fantastic," right in his face. So that was worth the money right there. But we've become more conservative with advertising because when you sit down and you talk with your consultants and your advertising people, they say, "Well, what action are you trying to get?" And we don't really have a great answer to that from a homeowner perspective. So we're pulling back on things like this and spending more on having the robust website, using social media, focusing on the education and outreach, and really touching people directly. So I would advise you that spending money on commercials and radio isn't really an effective use of outreach dollars. But from time to time, having a nice marquee on the billboard is something that it generated a little bit of buzz when the program was just getting off the ground.
Great. Not going to the next one. Could you advance it one slide? Well, it should work with just a clicker. There we go. All right, so there's our contact information, but I also wanted to end and reiterate something. This is what's happening in Onondaga County is very unique. Matt talked about the engagement with the city, but I'll just be very frank with you. What we have is a Republican-led county legislature, a Democratic-led city, working hand in hand to solve these problems, engaging others in the community like the big ivory tower institution on the Hill. And relations among all three of those entities over the years have varied but have been strained for most of the history of those organizations. We're really seeing that this is one of these efforts that has brought those groups together in a way that they're working in a collegial way for the betterment of the people of the community. And this is why I think this model is so unique and can be replicated elsewhere around the country, and it's why we want to spread the message. In fact, those leaders will be getting a national award here soon. I can't tell you what it is, but there is a lot of recognition of the importance of public, academia, private, reaching across the aisle, particularly in this day and age, how important that is. And here's a great success story that I think can be replicated for a number of different environmental challenges that we have, not just this one. So I told you I'd go quick. I really want to, that's it for me. I wanted to stop there because I want to offer the opportunity for everybody to have some question and answers. But before I do, I wanted Amy just to talk a little bit about furthering the role of academia, the role of research. And you might say, well, really, what's that got to do with promoting and moving these technologies forward? But I think there's a couple of examples that she could touch on really quick. And you can stay there, Amy, if you'd like. It doesn't matter. Of some of the things we're doing and how we think that's going to benefit communities. So we'll do that, and then we'll take some question and answers.
All right, thanks, Mark. So yeah, I was just going to highlight a few of the projects that I've been working with over the past few years and some of the successes and not so successes over the past couple years I've been working here. So I'll start off our building, Lee Platinum building with a green roof, 17,000 square feet, opened officially in March of 2010. The green roof was finished in 2009, and it wasn't until we really moved into the building in 2010 after the green roof was finished that, you know, some professors and students at SU were interested in saying, you know, I wonder what the water quality is coming off of it. How is the green roof operating? Nobody's really done a lot with that in the past. So, you know, working with the faculty, I kind of project managed it, and it was really difficult to go in after the green roof was built. We couldn't install any flow meters to measure how much water was coming off. I accidentally voided the roof warranty for approximately 20 minutes once, which wasn't good. So it was really difficult.
So I didn't know that.
Oh, now you do. We fixed it. It's still under warranty. But it was really difficult to go in after the construction, and you know, obviously everyone was really interested in doing this, and it's a university-owned building, and the university construction planning design and campus planning design and construction was, you know, really willing to help us out, but at that point it just kind of was too late. Luckily we troubleshooted, and we just successfully installed a flow meter under the roof, so we're now officially measuring how much water is being captured, and we've been measuring water quality for the past year and a half as well. So it was a little touch and go there for a while, but now we're successfully monitoring our green roof. Kind of on the flip side, Matt mentioned the on-center green roof. So we had a recent faculty move to Syracuse, and he was really interested in measuring water quality, water issues on green infrastructure. And he came in, and luckily he came in before it was constructed. He worked with Matt, and they got everything, kind of all the sensors, all the equipment. They worked together with the construction company, and they got it all in place as construction was happening. So that's pretty much a success story, the exact opposite of our story. But so I really want to stress the importance. Both Matt and Mark brought up university, county, city collaboration, and that's really where it's at. Luckily, we have students who are really interested in these projects. A lot of times there's money at the university in the, for instance, the engineering department at Syracuse to do some of these projects. So we get a sense of how these projects are performing. We're hoping to, streamline some of these efforts that are going on to help inform future programs. I know Matt's really interested to see how these are actually performing. So we're really excited about trying to put together some type of website, or maybe it will go on the Save the Rain website to see, real-time research that's going on. Another success story we recently had was we just started sampling a wetland out in about 40 minutes from Syracuse in Madison County, if you're familiar with the area. It's a constructed wetland on a CAFO cattle farm. And they're using the wetland was constructed by the local Soil and Water Conservation District to capture the storm runoff from the site and to see how well, to clean the water before it dumps into a stream behind the site. And we're working really closely with the local district, and we're going in and doing the sampling. We're working with the students at SU who have funding for it, and they're really excited about the project. So we're doing the sampling, they're doing all the analysis, and hopefully within the next few months we'll actually have some data and be able to see whether or not the wetland is performing, whether or not this could be used at other farms across the city, county, state, country. So that's really exciting as well. And just very quickly, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, the last project that we're working on that we're kind of taking the successes with Matt and the on-center roof is we are starting to construct an intermodal transportation center at our site, and there's going to be a large green infrastructure component of it, and we're engaging faculty at SU right now in the design phases. It's about to go out to bid, and they're giving us feedback on, okay, what will work for you to test this? Where would you like to install the sensors? What won't work? So it's really exciting to have them involved very early on to kind of for us to all work together and make it happen and be able to research it and get real-time data, censoring when this actually gets constructed. So I can't stress the importance enough with the university collaboration. They have a lot of resources, and they're really interested to get involved.
Right, so we thought that was important because we know there are a lot of interested universities in New Jersey, many that are working in this arena, and can help inform through research the best use and best acceleration of technologies in communities. So we actually very much encourage communities to work with their academic partners. So with that, Pam, I think it's all yours.
I'd like to open this up to questions now. I have only one request. If you would indicate your affiliation, your name and your affiliation, and then your question.
Hi, I'm Joe Pryor from JMT. I'm a former member of the Clean Water Council, probably 10 years ago, I guess. But I'm interested in some of the funding mechanisms. You mentioned these public-private partnerships on the green roofs. If somebody wanted to put a rain barrel in, where do they get them? Do they get them from the county? Assistance on rain gardens. I'm just curious how that funding all works and where it comes from.
The funding for the public-private, the Green Improvement Fund program, it's all local dollars. It's all sewer ratepayers. Sorry, it's all sewer ratepayers, and we are hopeful that our green infrastructure, ultimately the public green infrastructure, will be financed through the state revolving fund, low-interest loans. But the private sector ones are not eligible for SRF funding. So local dollars support them, and again, it's marching towards that objective, though, and investing those dollars. We could have invested them in the gray side. Instead, we're buying somebody a green roof. It's something that our community has embraced and gone forward with. And the private partners, it's turned into a bit of an economic development tool for us. People have come to us and have been very aggressive about it. We've evolved it over time. It's been very generous at the start, and I think as we evolve towards 2018, we'll be less generous and likely get to a point where what I'm envisioning and talking with the team about is even having the private sector potentially bid on their grants. And say our target's 35 cents a gallon, what we would do is have people potentially compete and say, well, I'll do it for 17, 18 cents a gallon, and really try to get that marginal cost down for us. But right now, to be very candid, we've been very aggressive. That green roof We paid for, I think, about 198% of the green roof that you saw in the picture because we really wanted to build some momentum up for the program. Correct. There's a sewer unit charge in Onondaga County that's a per household charge. It's a rather inelegant way to charge for sewer usage. It's something that on a strategic planning basis over the next 5 years we'll probably have to change how we charge for rates. As all these projects come online and the bonding that we're issuing to support it, the debt service kicks in, those sewer rates are projected to go up over 100% in the next 8 years. And 100% sounds like a lot, and generally people freak out when they hear 100% increase, but on a national basis, per household, it's $365 in Onondaga County for the sewer use charge right now, and it's projected to go up to $600 or $700, which is more towards the national average. So unlike some communities that you may be seeing throughout the country, we were in an advantageous position to advance this because we did have rather low sewer rates. If you're in a community that has already very high sewer rates and high debt burden, it will bring new challenges and different challenges. But what I do hope to see on the sewer rate issue going forward is a more elegant way to choose to bill people for it based on usage rather than just having a flat fee. It makes a lot more sense to bill somebody with 9 bathrooms and a swimming pool a little bit more than, you know, the single senior citizen that lives in a home and uses the 30 gallons per day average. It's not really equitable for them to be paying $360 a year each. So that will hopefully compress the hit on the median household as we start to see those rate increases increase.
Hi, I'm Vicki Margulies with DEP, Bureau of Non-Point Pollution Control. Just wondering what type of projects your suburban communities were working on or identified in contrast to your urban communities.
They're all online, which is good. They all have if you go to our homepage now, there's 3 big buttons on the homepage: Gray Projects, Green Projects ACJ, and Green Projects Suburbs. So you can go online and find fact sheets for every single one. But really it was I don't believe we did any green roofs, but it's a lot of porous asphalt, redoing of parking areas, putting rain gardens in, slimming down of a streetscape. One really good one that we liked was there's a rather large paved impervious area in a village where they've just done a great parks project, and now they want to slim the road down and add green infrastructure elements on the perimeter on that area where it's pretty impervious. But all 14 of the projects I mentioned have fact sheets available on the website. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but it's pretty standard stuff, and I think a lot of it was focused on municipal buildings. There was one that was in an older community. It's called Bayberry, and it's in the northern part of Onondaga County, where older homes, 1950s vintage, no storm sewers, and lots of flooding, lots of wet weather issues in the neighborhood. So we were very excited to see that neighborhood come in as a candidate project where they're going to really try to deal with some of their wet weather issues in the absence of storm sewers and really try to address it through some aggressive green infrastructure.
Let me just add a little. So beyond the Save the Rain program in Onondaga County, Amy mentioned constructive wetlands in a very rural area. So we're actually promoting that a lot across New York State as well, and that can be implemented in suburban communities in addition to rural communities. We're also doing work in the city of Binghamton now to try to replicate some of what's happening with Save the Rain. So one of the slides Matt had was Steal Our Stuff. He's also talking about the brand. The brand Save the Rain is something that we want to promote widely. It is available, so we would like to see that happen throughout New Jersey and everywhere so people really start to get the message here. And you see, Matt, they've got the website up behind you there.
Dan Van Abs, I'm on the New Jersey Clean Water Council. Question I have is, right now you're calculating on a project basis how much water you're keeping out of the combined sewer. Over time, I would imagine you're actually going to need to show that you meet the 250 million gallons per year target. How do you plan to do that? What mechanism are you going to use to move to project-by-project calculation to system-wide analysis?
A major component of the consent judgment is annual reporting and benchmarking and ambient monitoring. So we now have CH2M Hill, who's our design program manager, also managing our SWIM model, our stormwater model. The stormwater model backstops kind of the globalness of the projects and helps to give some context to the projects and how they all work together. So it's a combination of ambient monitoring to make sure that the water quality is improving to the standards we wish it to, and that we're getting 95% capture to the design storm in our CSO events. And in some communities, I've heard this as I've traveled around the nation too, some communities kind of benchmark themselves in different ways. Cleveland, I think, for example, their objective is reduction of CSO events. We have 65 CSO events per year. We need to get to 5 CSO events per year. That's not how we're measuring ourselves. We're measuring ourselves more to your question on the SWIM modeling and the 95% capture. And we do have flow metering on some of the CSOs. I don't believe that we meter every CSO, but we have flow metering. So it's a combination of flow metering, the monitoring, and the water quality assessment. And that's all reported annually. And we have to, it's not just get to 2018 and show that we achieved compliance. We have benchmarks every single year that we have to achieve and show progress to the courts through the annual reporting. And the annual reports are all available online.
Quick question for you while we're moving to the next speaker. Have you done a cost analysis, for example, with the impervious or pervious asphalt? How much does that cost in comparison to your traditional basketball courts?
It's the porous asphalt. I don't believe porous asphalt really has a huge price differential because that's really an engineering solution. They just do a different mix. Bigger stones, creating space. Porous concrete is more expensive. It's more difficult to put in place. You don't put porous concrete in the same way that you put conventional concrete in. Green roofs are rather expensive. We're starting to shy away from green roofs. The on-center green roof that I showed you, I think it's important to have it. It's a great community statement to make, but it's about $1 a gallon to do it, and we wouldn't necessarily do those all over the community at that rate if we can get capture somewhere cheaper. So it sometimes is a little bit more expensive, and that's really where the Green Improvement Fund helps to shave those additional costs down. But again, we don't necessarily measure ourselves on that because we're not doing a life cycle cost assessment. It's not like an energy efficiency project where we're trying to figure out what the payback period is over time. We're really, again, marching towards that capture, and the porous asphalt gets us the capture, so we buy it.
Okay.
Before you ask, Matt, can you clarify, so when you say that the green roof could be more expensive, that doesn't include other externalities like the potential insulating capability of a vegetated roof versus a regular roof, or, right? Yeah.
It's expensive to install. It also has those ancillary benefits, and that's what Dr. Davidson's going to help us to determine with his temperature gauges that he's put in the roof is what are the energy efficiency benefits of having the green roof on that facility rather than the stone cover that used to be on there. And we hope to see, I think the hypothesis is we'll see 17, 18, potentially 20% energy efficiency improvements in that structure, which will really represent real budget dollars. But again, on a payback basis, we would never pay for the green roof through those savings necessarily. The payback period would be longer than its useful life. But at the end of the day, it's an ancillary benefit.
Hi, my name is Jamie Murray, and I'm really excited you guys are here because I was born in Syracuse, New York, and I went to SUNY ESF, and my father, Jim Corbett, was a former legislator, so I'm really glad you
went to our wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, I did.
She's
That's
our first wastewater tourist in Onondaga County.
I wanted to mention that as part of your community outreach is that they had an event where they posted notice that there was an event at their wastewater treatment facility, and there were a lot of people there. And there was a video at the end with Joni Mahoney talking about the program. And it was, we went on top of the wastewater treatment plant. You got to see the whole city of Syracuse. And that's something that, we could definitely take back to New Jersey and use. I have a lot to say. Hopefully I can get it out. One of the aspects is I work in wastewater management and water quality management planning. And it's kind of a controversial regulation that we've had that's been altered in the past few years, and there was just recent legislation that changed it again. But what we were attempting to do was map out all of the proposed sewer service area in the whole entire state. So each county has a management plan, and we're mapping sewer service area. We have existing sewer infrastructure mapping, and then we have a proposed sewer service area where, if people need to connect, they need to get a treatment or works approval from the department. they have to be consistent with that plan. They have to be shown to be in the sewer service area, and we're trying to keep out environmentally sensitive areas out and of the sewer service area because we know where there is sewer service area, that's where that's where the development is going to go. So one of the things I was curious about, and we do a build-out analysis based on zoning. We have the existing infrastructure. We have a flow coming from end of pipe. We know what the flow is, and then we add based on zoning. We project a build-out, and then we can see how much flow is actually there. So one of the things I was curious about is how you guys measure. Maybe you talked about it and I missed it, and I apologize. But just talk about calculating that flow now and in the future for future connections when everybody wants to move to Syracuse because it's a great green city. The other thing I was curious about was environmental justice issues because we have 15 liaisons in environmental justice at the department, and I'm one of them. And I'm just curious what the process was in those communities, how they were notified, what their communities were like, and how that process moved forward. If you can just speak a little bit to that.
I was told there would be no math when I signed up for this, so I am not the technical person, but I'll do my best to. And I should mention though that Jamie's father was the chair of the Environmental Protection Committee meeting. He was a long and well-regarded, long-standing and well-regarded county legislator. And our program really would not have been possible without his leadership in the legislature and helping us get this through. And last year, Joni recognized him and gave him an environmental achievement award. And we were very lucky to have him as the chair of the Environmental Protection Committee at a time when we were advancing this very aggressively, and he really helped champion it through in the legislature, so you can tell him I was saying nice things about him. As far as the flow goes, we anticipate, and we have a sustainable development plan that we just put out publicly as a draft final document this past week. There's also another presentation available, I think, on the future.ongov.net if you're interested in seeing our sustainable development plan. And we do anticipate there that if the sustainable development plan is successful and we do drive infill back into the city and see a population surge in the city, it will have an impact on the flows. And that's a good outcome for us that we can deal with. And that's where our Speedies permit is very important and where the wastewater treatment plan, again, is very important, that the active flow system that we put in place and the phosphorus and ammonia system maintains its effectiveness as those flows potentially increase. It's more wishful thinking at this point. I don't know that we necessarily have a strategy in place. It's one of those things that if it does happen, we'll welcome it. But at the end of the day, it's not. And Matt Marco, who's with CH2M Hill, may be able to answer that a little bit better about how they're looking at that from a modeling perspective. But at the end of the day, we do want to drive that infill development and reduce some of the vacancy rates in the city, and that will absolutely have an impact. But again, from a wet weather point of view, if we're doing everything correctly, the wet weather issues should still be contained, and the 95% capture goal should still be achieved, regardless of if the population goes up by 50,000 or 25,000. I think that's the best I can give you on that one.
Well, then New Jersey, we could use that implementation, saving the rain in New Jersey. It's a huge problem in New Jersey, stormwater.
Yes, and we're absolutely looking, and we working with your father, we adopted a pretty aggressive sewer use ordinance directed not so much at the ACJ issues, but at shaving down those peak flows during wet weather instances where the pump stations just go 400 and 500% beyond capacity, and we have our SSO events, and those are far more serious than what we're dealing with in the city. So it's just another piece of the strategic plan that we're marching forward on. So I'd like to learn about the mapping that you're doing, because it's exactly what we need to do under our sustainable development plan, is putting together the fix-it-first strategy and really restricting any further expansion of our sewer system in Onondaga County.
Well, I can start the EJ issue, but Matt might want to add a little bit. I guess I would characterize it by saying you need to do five things. You need to be transparent. You need to be collaborative, inclusive. You need to operate with full disclosure as key value, and you need to value people. If you do that, then I think you get a holistic approach to the issue. So as those as the driving factors, you reach down into the communities, down into the neighborhoods, and involve the people and organizations that are already there. They know much better than anybody else does about what their needs are, how best to communicate to them, and you keep them involved through the whole process. So for instance, every week Matt has us have a public education and outreach meeting, And some of the folks from the neighborhoods come to those meetings and they call us out all the time. You know, you can't use a website to reach our people. You have to use different approaches to get to our people. So we're constantly hearing things that throw out the strategies that we thought were best to use. So it's really important to have them at the table, rhetorically speaking, using those community-based organizations to actually help and get their hands involved and see how they're going to benefit from it. They might even get jobs as a result. They're definitely getting job training indirectly and directly, and they can see how they're beautifying their neighborhoods, and they end up having a respect and understanding of nature that they might not have had otherwise, and not necessarily a fear of it from the security standpoint. It's not easy, but it's just about really valuing people and the opinions and ideas that they have, because they have some really good ones. That's how I think, what I see from the outside, that's how I think we've overcome some of the EJ issues. I don't know.
It's a great point, and I think we take it for granted. I take it for granted because I wasn't in the community when the fight was happening, and this was a very, very serious issue when the RTFs were going in, and the city was extremely upset about it. The mayor was 100% adamantly opposed to it, and there was a lot of tension in the community. It was not a calm scene, and it was just marching forward. And what's been remarkable, as I think about it, as Mark was talking, is what this new strategy's done, and now that the communities are seeing the investment, it's a very calm community now. We don't have. Someone asked me at a past conference, he says, well, who's opposed to this? And it gave me some pause, which generally doesn't happen to me. And I said, nobody. Nobody calls me and complains about this. Nobody calls me and says, why'd you put a green roof on the on-center? That's crazy. We're doing the trolley lot project. I showed you the pictures of the construction. I think we've gotten one complaint about that project in the last 12 months that it's been going on. The wonderful thing, and it just hit me as Mark was talking, though, is it's calmness. And people are just accepting it, and it's going forward, and they're like, oh, that's that Save the Rain thing. Yeah, cool, great. The sewer separation project went forward. This past 6 weeks, we've shut down 2 of the major roads in the city of Syracuse. I've not gotten one complaint about it. Oh, that's that Save the Rain thing, and they just kind of go about their business. You're going to give me a rain barrel? Great, that's great. There's a general happiness in the community about it, and that's something we shouldn't take for granted. I'm glad you asked the question, because as far as the environmental justice community goes, I think they feel victorious. They feel like they won. They got somebody who listened to them and delivered what they asked for. And now when we're putting that pipeline down the rest of the street, they kind of just accepted it and said, you know what? They fixed the big problem. We're going to deal with this last piece of construction, and then we're going to be done with it forever. And they've been a great partner of ours in designing the remedy to, once that big pipeline is done, I showed you that open cut, that community helped us design the green infrastructure strategies that we're going to put in place as the restoration of that streetscape goes in place. So it's been a really transformative dialogue in the community.
Yeah, now listening to you talk, you know, that is an epiphany. You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, because before you came on the scene, it was really not much calmness in Syracuse around these issues. So that's so true, and that's interesting. We should figure out a way to document that and get that on the website. When the EPA came last year to give us the Model Communities Award, one of the things we did, we had those people at that ceremony, because it was a ceremony for everybody. It wasn't just the leadership of the county executive. For instance, we had the Haudenosaunee, which is the Iroquois Confederacy, the leadership of the Iroquois Confederacy there, because arguably they might argue that they've faced the longest term and most severe environmental justice hits over the years, because Onondaga Lake, for instance, is sacred to them. And so they were there, and they felt valued. They felt like they were part of the process and helping to clean up something that's very important to them. So this is interesting. I think academia needs to do a paper on this, Amy. Yeah.
I'll work on it.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Tony.
Tony McCracken. I'm also on the Clean Water Council. What about community design standards, ordinances to protect what you've done? Yeah, community design standards, ordinances to protect what you've done. Going forward, how do you maintain the facilities to make sure they're operating in an optimal fashion?
It's very, very important, and that's where we do need the ordinance. We have a model ordinance that we're proposing. It's again, back to the calmness thing. I'm not sure what the city council's reaction is going to be, but we're going to deliver a pretty hefty change to the city stormwater ordinance, and we've pledged to stay away from zoning. But as far as the stormwater ordinance goes, we do wish to see the city have a much more aggressive approach to stormwater management and allowance of green infrastructure. The current stormwater ordinance in the city of Syracuse does not even contain the words green infrastructure. You cannot build a porous pavement sidewalk in the city of Syracuse without a variance from the city council. So there's challenges, absolute challenges there, but I think we also have the right leadership and the right cooperation, and I do look forward to having a debate with the city council about the stormwater ordinance, because we do need some hardwired city codes that protect our investments. And on the maintenance front, we want to make sure that in the near term, we're just going to do it. We're going to set the tone. We're going to build the manuals. We're going to hire the people to go out and make sure that they're maintaining a level of service. But in the long run, we do hope that the city just kind of builds it into their business model as far as going out and cleaning. They go out and clean storm drains now. Why can't they go out and clean storm drains and monitor the bioswale at the same time, too? But we're not forcing that issue on them and saying, we put this green infrastructure and you take care of it. What we're saying is, we're going to work with you over the next 3, 5, 7 years and build the right system to make sure that these are maintained. And again, it's a huge priority of ours, because we can still fail. If we make all these investments and don't take care of them, then everybody's going to say, we told you the maintenance was going to be a problem. We knew these weren't going to work. We have to be out there and be successful in making sure that those drains that you saw in one of the pictures I showed you aren't covered with trash and ineffective and causing flooding. They need to be cleaned up. It's not a huge technical challenge, but it's something that needs to be done.
Dan Van Haps again. In New Jersey, we have a lot of situations where in a specific geographic area, the water supply system, the stormwater system, the sewer system, and the sewage treatment plant are owned by 4 different entities. And I was curious, who owns those different systems in the area draining to Onondaga Lake, and how has that complicated the management process?
Very much. It has. Onondaga County took ownership of the wastewater treatment facility I showed you the picture of, I believe in the 1970s, when the city was having some fiscal crisis. The county at the time also took the interceptor sewers, the main interceptor sewers. The collection system is still owned by the city of Syracuse. Similarly, satellite communities also have their own collection systems which feed into our interceptor sewers, which feed into the city, which go to the wastewater treatment plant. So I think very similarly we have the same challenge of dealing with a town that owns the collection system but doesn't own the treatment facility, does not have a speedies permit. I don't know, did you have NPDs here, or do you have your own state permits? NIPD. And we have state speedies permits, and we are the permit holder, and if the town of DeWitt, where I live, which feeds into the wastewater treatment plant I showed you, doesn't take care of their collection system, I'm the violator, not the town of DeWitt. So it is creating challenges, and I think that gets back to the rate question, and what we're doing as a consolidated sanitary district is the key is really consolidation, and it's really not in the long term going to be effective as sewer rates rise, as asset management becomes more of an issue. You have to start talking about consolidation and managing this all as one water cycle. Having different administrative responsibilities for stormwater and wastewater, particularly in the context of what we're talking about today, doesn't make a lot of sense in the long run. And we need to have the right people at the management table all working together on stormwater and wastewater issues. Those wet weather spikes that we see and the I&I issues are also the same problem that the MS4 managers are dealing with in the suburban communities. So we all need to be at the same table, and when we may, it depends on how long I survive in Onondaga County, because I'm driving myself into an early retirement, or how long the county executive wishes to give me the latitude to do crazy stuff. But I do think consolidation is on the horizon for us, because it is a tremendous challenge for us to get coordination as we leave the city and start dealing with towns and villages. And that's why I think the $3 million suburban program is an important development, because now we have a partnership. Now we're working together on it. And I think that they're going to see some success when they make these investments. So it cost me $3 million, but I may get some great new partners out of it.
Yes, sir.
Good presentation. I liked it. One question I have that...
Could you give us your name, please, and your affiliation?
Shadab Ahmad with Division of Water Quality, NJDEP. The question I have is you indicated that you're going to remove around 250 million gallons a year from the CSO discharges. Do you know what's the total amount of it is, or what percentage the green infrastructure consists of that total amount?
Yeah, the 250 million gallons equates to 6.3% of our objective of having 95% reduction in the CSO. So 6.3% of the 95% is green infrastructure.
So I'm assuming that the other percentage will be picked up by the gray infrastructure?
That's correct. Those
Okay.
two large storage systems I showed you,
Okay.
as well as we still get the benefit of that regional treatment facility that I showed you that was constructed. So that's a piece of the reduction there, and then the management of the interceptor sewers and weirs and things of that nature are part of the strategy of capture as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. Go ahead.
My name is Firdaus Ali. I'm a member of the council representing agriculture, and I was amused to hear the name constructed wetland on farms. How did you get them involved, or how are you funding those projects? Do you get any external help, just like from USDA or anything?
So I think we talked about two different wetlands, but the wetland I talked about was funded by the local soil and water conservation district, and we found out about it from their office because they really wanted to see how it was performing, and we had the resources to do that research. So that specific project wasn't tied into the Save the Rain project. It was just kind of a research project. That was a success story.
To build on that, though, we do have a very strong relationship with the USDA Rural Development, and we talk to them all the time about constructed wetlands being a strategy to deploy, and also the Farm Service Bureau and other organizations of farmers. So we're seeing more interest in this. So I think if we were to come back next year, we'd probably have a number of other stories to tell you. So hopefully that answers your question.
If there are no further questions, I'd like to give a hearty round of applause and thank you so much. This has been wonderfully helpful to us here in New Jersey.
And as promised, we're getting you out of here early. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, and please reach out to us, the Environmental Finance Center. We're here to serve, so we can help you out and we can help replicate this program elsewhere. Thanks a lot.